When I was a little boy, I slept like the dead. I would fall asleep the second my head hit the pillow for 10 hours a night. I remember my mother reading me fairy tales just before I fell asleep when I was little. I always wanted to hear how the hero triumphed, but I could never stay awake until the story was finished. She'd continue reading anyways, right up until the end, and the story and my dream would sort of mix into one. But as I grew older, I became less comfortable with the world around me, and I became afraid of sleeping. I started having bad dreams. They seemed real. Too real. I've heard of lucid dreaming, and of people who know they are in a dream the second they enter one. That's not me. My dreams started to feel like an extension of my own reality, and it became difficult for me to know the difference between the dream world and real life. I got caught up in them. I became terrified of sleeping. Oneirophobia, it's called. The fear of dreaming. Of not knowing the difference between your dreams and reality. I've gone to great lengths to avoid sleeping altogether. Living life on such little sleep is daunting, but you do eventually get used to it. It's better than the alternative after all. Sufferers from oneirophobia have many methods to try and stay awake, and I've adopted these. Coffee is now my best friend. I take caffeine pills, watch TV at night with very loud volume. I blow a fan on me at high settings. I drink a lot of water at night, so if I do accidentally fall asleep, my bladder will ensure that it's not for too long. All of this helps, but it can't entirely prevent the inevitable. I should be clear. Oneirophobia is different than the fear of nightmares. That is its own separate phobia. No, oneirophobia is specifically the fear of dreaming, of falling asleep. Because when dreams feel so impossibly real, the spectacular dreams are almost as bad as the nightmares. My mother died when I was 9 years old, and this is where the problem first started. I still to this day often dream that she's back in my life. There's no explanation for why she's there. She just is, and it feels real. And it's always so heartbreaking for me when I wake up. As much as those dreams of my mother are agonizing, the nightmares are worse. It's very difficult to explain how they occur, but I'm now going to share the strangest events from last night. I hadn't slept at all in over 4 days, almost a 100-hour period. I knew going into last night that I would lose this battle. No matter how hard I tried, I would fall asleep. I went through my usual routine. I took 3 caffeine pills and had 4 or 5 cups of coffee brewed. I had Netflix on, ready to binge watch yet another season of TV all in one night. I remember sipping my coffee. I was bored with what I was watching and I clicked on the new releases section. I was hoping for something to pique my interest because when I watch things I'm not fully into, I'm more likely to fall asleep. And that's when I heard knocking at my apartment door. I looked at the time. 2:40 a.m. I had absolutely no idea who it could be, so I elected to ignore it. But then it happened again. It was loud. It was aggressive. I approached the door and looked through the eye hole and saw the hallway on the other side. There was nothing there. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Before I knew it, my door slammed shut behind me. I tried to open it, but it was locked. I looked around the hallway. Is anyone out there? I spoke aloud. Only silence returned. And then, the lights in the hallway went out. It was pitch dark. I couldn't see anything. Nothing at all. I heard footsteps moving around me. I also heard giggling. It didn't sound human. And then something started touching my back. Something started breathing in my ear. Footsteps, giggling, breathing, darkness. And then I heard an explosion. I sat up on my couch in a flash. I looked around the room in a panic to get my bearings. The explosion had come from the show on the television and had awoken me. You see, that's how it happens. The dreams come completely out of nowhere. I never see it coming. I never know when it will end. I never know when it will begin. I checked the time. 2:30 a.m. I had barely been asleep at all. Maybe 20 minutes. In frustration, I took another sip of coffee. I surfed the internet. I watched some more TV. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something peering at me from behind a corner. I swept my head to the side in a panic and stared. It was only there for a moment. It was scaly, with yellow eyes. It peers ever so slightly from around the corner, looking at me. So I was still dreaming all along. Was it a dream within a dream? Or had I fallen asleep all over again? Or, most horrifying of all, was I not currently even sleeping? Whatever that thing is, I've seen it before, and it seems to be around every corner. It slowly creeps towards me until I see it. Then it retreats in half a second. I can't get a real good look at it. I'm not sure that I ever want to, and I have no idea what will happen if it even reaches me. That's the worst part of this phobia. It makes you start to believe that you're no longer dreaming, that I'm actually sitting in the real world, where a monster is staring at me from behind a corner. Oneirophobia, they call it. But maybe it's not dreams that us sufferers of this phobia really fear. Maybe it's the real world we're unable to confront. Maybe we lie to ourselves and try to convince ourselves that everything is okay, but it blurs the real world and reverie into one. It puts us in denial of reality and the horrors that come along with it. Adversity, anguish, affliction. Its yellow eyes always peering at us, just out of sight, from around the corner. We don't want to see it. We want to keep pretending everything is okay. But it's there. It's there, waiting for us to let our guard down. Maybe when we read fairy tales to our children, we're trying to convince ourselves that everything will be okay. So we keep reading along after they've fallen asleep. Maybe we see that we have more in common with the villains than with the heroes. All of us do. That the world waiting for our children is daunting, callous, and discriminatory, and we ourselves can't face it. It can damage us, kill us. Even when you're a mother, even when you have a 9-year-old son waiting at home, desperate for her to return. A world full in its entirety of the villains our children are taught to fear. Maybe it wasn't nice of us to lie to our children and try to convince them otherwise. And maybe when they figured out the truth, they blended verity with the abstract, and it created oneirophobia, the fear of dreaming. Because reality is too much of a nightmare on its own, and dreams either exemplify it or create false hope. It is quite possible all of you out there reading this aren't even real. And when I wake up, you will all disappear. Much like whatever is staring at me from around the corner. And maybe that aberration is with you all right now. You just haven't known to look. I don't know if you're in a house or apartment or a cubicle, but look at the closest corner. Stare. And if you see that scaly face with yellow eyes slowly peer out at you, then you're part of my dream. And if you don't see it, then you're part of my nightmare.